Good evening, everyone, and welcome to session 2 in this subject, use training packages and accredited courses to meet clients' needs. Tonight, once again, I'll go through a brief overview of what we'll be doing, and hopefully it'll be even shorter than last night. We'll get through some interesting information that'll set us up for the Saturday session for those who can make it. We'll open up some Q&A again at the end, and hopefully, like I said, you'll learn something new. Solidify what you learned last night, leave here a little bit smarter, which is good for everyone. So tonight, just at the start, we'll do a very quick recap of the main points from last night's webinar. We'll also have a look at what SSOs are and IRCs. We'll unpack a unit of competence, and to be honest with you, I think we'll leave it at that from that point, go into our question and answer, and then take it from there. So chapter 1 is the quick review and the SSOs and IRCs. Once again, this is that official unit overview that I read to you last night. I won't go through it again. I'll slowly pause, so if you go back through this and you want to read it as a recorded webinar later down the track, I'll leave you enough time to be able to read that. I'm sure Alex will go through and just edit that out anyway. All right, so just a quick review from last night, guys. Industries have training packages. Training packages have qualifications. Qualifications have units of competence. And units of competence tell us trainers what a student must be able to do or produce or understand to be deemed competent, to be able to pass that unit. And once again, just remembering that how you teach and assess those units of competence will be up to you, but that's all to come in later subjects. Industries have training packages have qualifications, qualifications have units of competence, and units of competence have elements of performance criteria and other elements that we're going to go through tonight and learn all about. So first up, I just wanted to go a little bit deeper than what we went last night in understanding how training packages and qualifications are put together, because there has been significant changes in that area over the last 6 to 12 months. And I thought it was important that you guys get an understanding of that, because as you move from this course into industry, you'll hear these people being, or these groups being talked about. And it's important that you have some sort of relevance to that and you'll know what people are talking about. So previously I mentioned the training packages, qualifications and units of competence are created as part of an exhaustive consultation process. Over the past 12 months, the makeup of these consultation groups has gone through a major change in philosophy and approach. Training packages are now developed by service skills organisations. Now, formerly, they were known as ISCs, or Industry Skills Councils. And I have no doubt as I teach you this qualification, as we train through this qualification, at different times you're going to hear me talk about ISCs because they've just been around forever, so to speak. But these days, they've been replaced by service skills organisations. And they're there to meet the training needs of an industry or a group of industries. Skills service organisations, or SSOs, develop training packages when industry identifies the need for nationally recognised training that is not currently covered by a training package. So they're not really going back over a lot of the existing stuff. They're out there now saying, hey, in this new world, what do you need? And then obviously they're working collaboratively with the IRCs to bring all that together. So SSOs develop and validate training packages through extensive research and consultation with industry stakeholders. Training packages are then endorsed by the Australian government and state and territory governments, and approve those for use throughout Australia. So the SSOs develop the packages, the governments across the board say, yep, that's good enough. And then all of a sudden we have a new nationally recognised qualification. Skills service organisations support industry reference committees, IRCs, in their work to develop and review training packages. So it doesn't all get done by the SSOs. The SSOs actually support and help these IRCs, these industry reference committees. The SSOs that cover all the different industries in Australia are Skills IQ, Artibus Innovation, Skills Impact, PwC's Skills for Australia, Australian Industry Standards, and Innovation and Business Skills Australia. Innovation and Business Skills Australia, who were also known as IPSA, and kind of still do, definitely work around the TAE qualification. And as you guys move into industry with this qualification, you'll hear those guys, their old reference and new reference being used. Australian Industry Standards were once known as TLISC, or they absorbed TLISC, which was the Transport and Logistics Industry Skills Council. And they were the people that put together the driving instructor training package or qualification, and everything to do within transport and logistics, which I referenced last night, came from TLISC, but they're now the Australian Industry Standards. Funny enough, I got an email from those guys today saying, hey, we're putting together a new IRC for the transport and industry sector, and we want people to be nominated. They actually called for it last year, and there was a deadline in November. Obviously, they didn't get the people they wanted, and they've gone and called for again, and they've now extended that out to March. The new model for developing and maintaining training packages places industry at the centre of the process. This greatly expands opportunities for industry and other stakeholders to have their voices heard. That's because industry reference committees, which drive the process of training package development, are made up of people with experience, skills and knowledge of their particular industry sector. And there's a real clear set of rules on who they want to put their hand up for IRCs. When I went through the criteria today, they definitely have to be industry-based. They're looking at people that are not only upper management, they don't have to be right at the top of their tree, but they need to be people that have extensive industry reach and already have established networks. So obviously they want to tap into the very people that can go out and tap into industry. So having, 4 people that just happen to put their hand up in the lunchroom at a transport company is not good enough. They're really looking for high quality candidates that are well respected in their industry, have an established position within their industry, and have an extensive network. So obviously when they first called for the IRCs for the transport and logistics industry last year, they mustn't have been happy with the caliber, and they've gone and called for it again, and they're asking for new candidates. I'll keep on going on. So with these IRCs, it's their job to ensure training packages address the needs and concerns of employers, employees, those who provide training. So they're the guys that do come and speak to a company like us, and those seeking its benefits. It's a role they take really seriously. And like I was saying to you last night, Alex and I got on the back of one of the large major building companies who we do all their first aid training for. We were lucky enough, they kind of sneaked us into these meetings late last year. And it was really interesting to see how much this focus was on these SSOs working with the IRCs to create courses that industry wants, no longer what the industry skill councils wanted or what the public wanted. They were like, no more. We're not going to have another 10,000 fitness instructors out there. There's enough of those already out there. They're taking all the money out of government funding. We don't need any more childcare workers. We don't need any more fitness instructors. We need to go talk to industry and say, hey, who do you want? And then we'll go create those qualifications and courses for them. Cool. That's that done. I think we all now have a really strong understanding of how training packages and qualifications are put together. Chapter 2, unpacking of a unit of competence. Tonight, from here on, it's going to be sort of slightly technical what we go through. However, and it's a shame that we're not in the classroom together, because in a classroom environment, I would now be wanting to get you guys to participate in the course in a modern way. And I guess what I'm going to do here is also offer you that chance that in a modern classroom, instead of telling everyone to turn off their computers, their laptops or their iPads or even their phones, I'm actually saying turn them on. Because while I'm talking about this stuff and referencing different web pages and whatever the case may be, I'm actually okay with you searching for that as I rattle on in the background. So this whole new conversational approach to training, where it's not just me front and center and you guys all subserviently sitting in front of me, if this was in a classroom now, I'd actually be saying to you, if you got an iPad, as I go through this stuff, if you want to check up on something I'm saying, go for it. It's an interesting approach, but what we know is that now when we teach like that, the inquisitive mind actually gets to quickly check up on something and then they'll come back to the presentation. Or you might, as a presenter, allow time for people to look up something, do a little bit of research, and then move on with your presentation. And what we know, it actually connects the information from your presentation and the words coming from your mouth much better. And it actually has a much more lasting impression. We've seen a huge change in that with our schools groups. So as most people know here, that we do an extensive schools program with road safety initiatives. And instead of telling everyone now to turn off their laptops or turn off their iPads, we're actually saying leave them on. Absolutely positively, there's a very strict adherence to it, in that obviously they want to get onto social media and all that kind of stuff. And sometimes you've got to pick your groups you can do it with. But if you guys have got a little screen beside you or anything like that, and you want to investigate some of the things I'm speaking about on another screen, feel free to go for it. It's the whole new approach to training in some ways. Can't always do it with every subject, but it is very effective. So similar to the overhaul of training package development is the reworking of units of competence. So once again, over the past 12 to 24 months, units of competence have started to be overhauled and updated as part of a larger vet sector overhaul. So at the moment, we're all stuck in a time and place where there's two versions of these units of competence, and they will continue to exist for a little while. A lot of the units have been updated, and a lot still haven't. And some of them will just die a slow death with the qualification or with the training package. And remember how we talked about last night, how training packages have lifespans, qualifications have lifespans, and some of them they'll say, oh, we'll need to update that now because that qualification and unit needs to survive for quite a lot longer. And others will be like, well, in actual fact, that qualification is about to die. We're going to have to rewrite that whole qualification again, so we won't even bother with those. We'll just keep those as a unit of competence that can still be used, even though it's in the old-fashioned way that these units of competence are written and we decipher them. Units of competency are the initial building blocks to a qualification that live within a training package serving an industry. So once again, it's important as a trainer and assessor within VET that we have a clear understanding of the format and structure of these units of competency. Remember, units of competency are nationally agreed statements of the skills and knowledge required for effective performance in a particular job or job function. In actual fact, in some of my research, once again today and over the last month or so, I've noticed that although we always used to say the dimensions of competency, and a unit of competence lists the skills, attitude and knowledge required to perform a job function in particular, I have noticed that some of the texts I've read lately have really gone back to emphasizing the attitude bit, that if someone is to pass a subject properly, if they are to truly demonstrate competency in something that we've trained them, then it's not just good enough to measure the skills and knowledge, we also have to measure the attitude. And again, if we think from a road safety point of view, teaching someone to approach a stop sign at a speed and stop, give way to vehicles and then take off smoothly, the attitude towards that could have a significant outcome. If we teach someone with the attitude of safety and preservation of life and the attitude of being a good on-road citizen, the way they approach that stop sign, the way they stop, the way they look for cars left and right and wait for what's deemed to be a safe gap and take off is completely different to someone who would approach that intersection with a really bad attitude. Yeah, they would still come screaming up to the, probably come screaming up to the stop sign. They'd still stop the vehicle, but what they deem as a safe and I guess in some ways polite gap, where they slam on the gas and take off and cut everyone off, yeah, from a skills point of view, both vehicles slowed down towards the intersection, both came to a stop, and both took off and drove straight across the intersection. But the attitude part of it would have had such a significant impact on whether we really deem someone competent at it. And that obviously goes across a whole lot of boards. I guess, again, referencing Tristan, who's here tonight, you think about when you've taught people already, Tristan, certain things, and you'll have students, hopefully all your students demonstrate a great attitude towards the job function that you're training them in. But if you think about it, you'll have students that demonstrate a good attitude, and you'll really feel like, yeah, this person gets it. And then sometimes you get those reluctant learners. They can't quite see why they're learning this, and that's something we're going to learn all about in the coming weeks. It's such an important part of training. But yeah, and you'll sort of think, well, this guy can kind of do what he needs to do. He can pop in the numbers, or he can run the program. But in actual fact, his attitude's not really that great. And you're kind of reluctant to say, yeah, you passed it, because you know their attitude sucks, and you know that bad attitude down the track will actually maybe affect their job performance or job outcome. So it's an interesting one that these units of competence clearly state out the skills, the knowledge, and the attitude required for effective performance doing that particular job or job function. It'll describe the work outcomes, the unit of competence, and it can logically stand alone when applied in a work situation. And that's an important thing to understand. When you write courses, or when you find courses for a particular need for a client, sometimes you'll want some of these units of competence to kind of all meld in, to be blended into one another. I'll talk about what the proper name for that stuff a little later on. I'm sure Alex will type it in the corner there for everyone to look at. But we also need to write these units of competence, or the assessment and the training for these units of competence, as a standalone work situation, in that you could enroll into a course, but because you've done other areas of study, that you could do that unit of competence by itself. You wouldn't need to do the other 10 units of the course, but you could do that unit by itself. You could be assessed for that unit by itself, and you could be ticked off and passed for that unit by itself, and that would be a great thing. So each unit has a number of components that require careful analysis. It's important when unpacking a unit of competency to always think it through with the intended industry outcomes in mind. So think of the person doing the job properly. It's such an important thing to be able to do. Now, because they really only let us train in, or are only meant to train in areas that we already have expertise or qualifications, that shouldn't be too hard. But like Alex and I have quite often happened to us, we have companies that come to us and say, hey, we want you to create this course for us. So we've actually become quite good at writing qualifications and materials for courses that we have no so-called work experience in. And yet the funny thing is, we then have companies come and buy that stuff from us, even though they're the so-called experts in it. So it is definitely, as you work through this qualification and you will enter industry, if you really start to spend time in that part of the industry where you're finding courses, creating courses, or creating assessments, you become this real expert at being able to read units of competence and understanding what they're doing. But from a normal practitioner point of view, you'll have that unit of competence, and you'll say to yourself and think to yourself, well, how does a person do this job properly? And from that, you can kind of frame what this unit of competency is trying to achieve, and you'll have a real specific mind map or picture in your mind of how that gets done, and it'll really help you and make it so much easier for you to write assessments and create training for it. Components. So units of competency usually contain a number of components. And we'll take a look at the core components of a unit. Some units will separate some of these components into other sections. Essentially, the information in each unit is the same, even if it's separated under different component headings. And it's funny enough, one of the units that we'll end up looking at, does that. When I was using the material that I used to explain the different components, the one I've actually used had several more sections to it, but it was really just the same information wrapped up in different headings. So it's a bit of a shame that in a sector that's meant to be all about consistency and quality assurance, that we can still have at its very foundation these units of competence, which are so important, can actually be written with some variation, which can, lead to confusion at different times. It's one of those many contradictions that sometimes occur within our sector. Bear with me. So sometimes units will go through an update that only changes its code. None of the information within the unit will actually change. Usually, older units can be deemed equivalent to their new versions. So, as you know, tonight we're doing TAEDES402A, use training packages and accredited courses to meet clients' needs. Sometimes these units will, like I said, will go from, like the next one will become TAEDES402B, and I'm going to explain that in a minute. But what's happened inside the unit, really nothing changed. All they did was that as the qualification was updated, they got that unit, they updated its national code, which again we'll talk about in a minute, but nothing else stayed inside. Nothing else within the units was changed. So the old unit can be deemed equivalent to the new unit, and that's fantastic. Someone can come along and update their qualification. That particular unit, there's no work to be done. They'll be RPL'd, not direct credit transfer, but RPL'd for that previous learning because, hey, that old unit is the same as the new unit. Everyone's a winner. Sometimes, though, the old units are updated and they'll go from a to a B or a B to a C. However, significant changes will have taken place. And at that stage, in that situation, the old units will be deemed not equivalent. So someone will come along and go, man, but I've got TAE, DES 402A, and it says use training packages and accredited courses to meet clients' needs. And you're saying that I need to enroll in TAE DES 402B, use training packages and accredited courses to meet clients' needs, but you're telling me that I have to do, this unit again. Why is that? And you'll say, well, what you can see here is that within this unit, what makes up this unit, they've gone and changed this area here, and they've gone and changed that area there. And on the website where all this information is listed, it clearly tells you that this unit is no longer equivalent because of these components, and you're going to have to just study that part of the unit. You mightn't have to do the whole unit, but what we'll do is we'll train you in those missing bits and we'll upscale you. And that occurs from time to time. And again, we will learn all about this through the assessment cluster. So here's a unit that's gone through an update. The unit's called TLIF 2010A, Apply Fatigue Management Strategies, or its update is known as TLIF 2010, Apply Fatigue Management Strategies. So this is a classic case of a unit that has gone through the update that coincided with this whole restructuring of the qualifications and how units of competence are actually, more so how units of competency are written and formatted. TLIF 2010A to TLIF 2010. So when you search for a unit using Google, usually two things occur. The training.gov website will show up referencing the web page that's associated with that unit. So I might say to you, hey guys, I need you to train a group of kids, or we've got an organization that's come to us and they want us to teach a group of kids how to do basic computer skills, or they want us to teach this group of kids how to buy a second-hand car based on safety, which all of our driving instructor students will know about because they do a bit of work on that. And you'll go off and say, all right, you'll type in how to buy a safe car or how to select a safe vehicle or something like that. And sure enough, within your Google search, up will come the training.gov website saying, hey, this is a unit of competence called TLIF 0097, select a safe vehicle. Or underneath that, you'll see a PDF that if you clicked on would take you straight to the document, this unit of competency called TLIF 0097. So you normally get a choice of the web page or the actual PDF itself. And again, if you happen to be on a computer somewhere, if you want to look up TLIF 2010 or TLIF 2010A, you should, in your Google search on another screen, get that. unit of competency, somewhere in there will be the training.gov reference to it, and there should also be somewhere a PDF that is that unit itself. Has anyone else got another spare screen where they can do that? No one's typing, so maybe they are, which would be a great thing. What we always say is that although it's convenient, excellent, Adrian, although it's really convenient to click on the PDF immediately, good stuff, Tris. Excellent, dude. Although it's convenient to click on the PDF immediately, we always suggest to go to the website first, because Google obviously doesn't recognize the latest version. It'll just click on the one that's has been most chosen the most. And obviously, if you've got two versions of that unit, and one's 4 years old and one's only 3 weeks old, well, then obviously, you know, the old one's going to turn up higher in the search most likely, because it's just been used so much more than the new one. So it's really important that when you do a search on Google, go to the training.gov page rather than the PDF itself, unless you specifically know the code and whatever the case may be. So when you actually go to the training.gov web page, this is what the top of the page looks like. It's actually a very long scrolling page. So this will end up having the electronic version of this unit of competency. But just at the top of the screen, it's going to tell you, first of all, it'll list the unit. So it might be a little bit hard on your picture to see this, but up the top, it'll have, as you can see, it says the unit of competency details, and it says TLIF 2010. I can't even see on my little presenter version with the bits that let me see what you're doing on the sides. I can barely read it, but I'm not sure if that's 2010 or 2010A, the one that I've brought up. So it'll actually list the unit. It'll tell you if it's current or superseded. It'll tell you if it has superseded a qualification, which one it has. So I'm now guessing that this is TLAF 2010, because I can see a listing under the superseded section. So it'll be saying that it's superseded TLAF 2010A. It'll tell you if you require the companion guide. Now, we won't go too much into companion guides tonight, but the companion guide is important, because what has happened with the update to all these units of competency and qualifications, that as they've updated particular units, even though they've created a new unit of competence, the industry will have said to the IRC or the SSO, hey, there's some other issues that are really important. So they've actually created these companion guides where you've got to go and also open up that document and read that document in conjunction with your unit of competence. And from that, you can get the complete picture of what industry wants and expects you to get your students to do, how they're going to do the job as a result of your training and your assessment of them. So as you create an assessment and a training plan for a particular unit, you're going to have to use the unit of competency, and you're also going to have to use the companion guide if there happens to be one there with it. It'll also tell you what training packages use the unit of competence. So even there on my particular example there, it mentions transport and logistics, and I think a couple of other packages, which would make sense. Fatigue management is an issue in several areas, and obviously they'd want to have a look at that. They're also going to list what qualifications use it. So not just what training package uses it, but also what qualifications, what courses. And if you were to scroll down further, it would actually show you an electronic version of the whole unit of competence. But more importantly, just below the next box, which tells you what qualifications that use that unit, you actually have the downloadable versions. And they'll be the latest versions associated with this unit. There'll be Word versions and there'll be PDF versions. And that's really important. And that's where I would download the information from, not straight from the Google search that's brought it up on that front page of Google. I would go into the training.gov page, scroll down, and then click on either the Word or the PDF version of those documents, and they would be the ones that I would download. So here's a look at the two PDF pages at a time. So this is what the units of competence look like. Every unit of competence, unfortunately, has the exact same blue page. There are some color variations now, but they're virtually all blue. On the front of it, it'll tell you the code and everything that's associated with it. Now, the funny thing is, I had a, oh no, that's okay. No, it's okay. I'll go on and I'll get to that in a minute. It has its code, and then it has some information here on the right, which is the unit descriptor, the application of the unit, and some other requirements. I'm going to actually explain these in the following slides. So first of all, we have the title, and the title describes the work activity covered by the unit, and it's exactly that. So you'll have TLIF 2010, and then it has Applied Fatigue Management Strategies. And then you'll have the unit descriptor. And the unit descriptor clarifies the purpose of the unit by describing the work function. It provides information on the current content of the unit and the skill areas it addresses. It can include prerequisite skills and licensing requirements. In some units, additional information is also provided under separate headings like prerequisites. So does this person need to do a level of study before they can get into this unit? Co-requisites, is there anything that they need to do in conjunction, or any other associated units and the application of the unit. What I've just realized is there's a missing slide, and I don't know why it's there, but I might, with a bit of chance, wing that information at the end of the presentation. On the next slide, it goes through and we have a look at a thing called employability skills, and then the evidence guide or required skills and knowledge. So as it says here, the next thing on the unit of competence is the employability skills. This component indicates the unit contains embedded employability skills. Since January 2007, all new and revised training packages have had employability skills embedded within each unit of competency. Employability skills have replaced key competencies, and if your unit has embedded employability skills, you need to refer to the employability skills summary detailed in the qualifications framework section of the training package. Now, funny enough, employability skills has now been replaced by foundation skills, which is what I talked about last night. And again, foundation skills have kind of gone back to that LLNN, language, literacy, and numeracy, and mathematical needs of someone in the workplace. Employability skills talks about what makes a person employable. Their ability to communicate, their ability to work in teams, and all those sorts of things. So those components are still written into units of competence. When employability skills first came out, there was a huge rush on in auditing and everything like that to make sure they were being taken care of. And then really, you would read up, you'd get a new unit of competence and you'd read it. And instead of the unit specifically telling you where the employability skills were written into the unit, so where they had to do communication and where they had to demonstrate that they can get along with others or whatever, the units just kept on saying employability skills has been written throughout this document. So it was their way of saying, yeah, we think once we wrote this, everything that makes up employability skills was already taken care of, so trust me, it's there. So as a result of that, they've kind of died a bit of a slow life, the employability skills, and then the new units don't even reference them. And then we have the performance, so we have, alrighty, so there we go. I'm missing, I think what it is, I'm actually accidentally missing some slides through my clicking of my mouse. I'm just going to, for a moment, bear with me guys, just in case I accidentally missed, thank you. That's good. Alrighty, I'm actually, guys, I hate to do this, and sorry, Alex, I don't know how you're going to, edit this out, but I would like to go back and go through this, because obviously when I've clicked on my little mouse, it somehow missed a couple of slides, and it's actually quite important that we go through this. There it goes again. It actually just changed the slide by itself. Like I said, we'll go back and visit. I'm going to bend your brains for a minute, guys, and I'm so sorry, and I'm breaking all the rules of training here. I should have just gone through and then come back to this at the end, but I want to actually get this foundation information in. So although I've deliberately, like it says here, chosen a unit that has been updated, however, I actually first of all want to look at this TAE unit so I can explain what this national code is, because already you guys have already noticed that every one of these units of competence has this national code. And it's actually important that we understand what that code means. So for my example, I'm actually going to use a unit called TAEDES402B. Now, this is an old unit of competence. It has been superseded. Some of the, all of the driver training students will have already done the latest version of this unit of competence, but I'll use this code to explain what these national codes are all about. So first of all, the TAA part, that actually means that this unit is a part of the training and assessment training package. The TLI in the TLI 2010 unit, the other ones that we're looking at, tells us that that unit is from the transport and logistics training package. And again, that information is listed on that front page of that web, the front web page for that unit. So if you go to the training.gov website and you bring up that, it should tell you what industry sector it lives in. But for us, we can start to decipher this stuff. Some of them you'll know, and some of you go, I've never heard that, industry sector before, and you look it up and you'll find out. So the first three letters are telling you what industry sector or what training package this unit of competence has come from. The next part, especially in the TAE, tells that it's the DES tells us that it's a design unit and it's in that field or stream. So within, and we're doing a design unit now, within the TAE qualification, there's several streams. There's the assessment stream. So all the units that say TAE ASS is telling us this is a TAE unit, a part of the training and assessment or training and education training package, and that's a part of the assessment cluster. Any of the units that have TAE, DEL, the DEL will stand for delivery. So that's all about you delivering a particular, they're all the subjects that teach you about delivering training to people, to groups, to individuals, whatever the case may be. And then you've got the DES cluster, which is the design units. And this is where you're learning how to design training for clients and for people and whatever the case may be. So you've got the assessment cluster, you've got the design cluster, you've got the delivery cluster. There are some, then it falls away into some smaller areas, but pretty much the main components of TAE is the assessment cluster, the design cluster, and the delivery cluster. The 4 in the unit, after the design, tells us that it's a certificate 4 level unit. In the applied fatigue management, we have the 2. So that one's telling us it's a level 2 unit. And hence why, if you were to look at these 2 units, you would see that the TAA unit would be much more complex than the fatigue management unit. So this is where we get that whole grading of qualifications, Cert 1 through to Advanced Diploma. And for those of us that are there on Saturday, that's one of the main areas I'm going to train on Saturday, is that we're going to look at the different levels of qualification, as well as have a look at the assessment and all that kind of stuff. But again, don't panic, guys, if you can't get there, because the portal already has this information. The other presentations that these are based upon have that information. You'll be able to have access to it. You'll clearly learn from it anyway. The portal actually lists the web pages where I get the information from, so you can click onto those web pages anyway and see where I've referenced my material from. And it's all good. It all ends up being okay. So, like I said, TAA tells us it's from the training and assessment training package. DES tells us it's a part of the design cluster. 4 tells us it's a unit 4, a level 4 unit. The O2 tells us that it's the second unit in the design stream. So you might have TAEDS 401B, TAEDS 403 or B or C, or whatever the case may be. So there will be a number of units within the design cluster, and this will be 401, 402, 403, 404, whatever the case may be. And it's just telling you the what unit is within the stream. 9 times out of 10, the stream is logical, that you would teach 401 and then go on to 402 and then go on to 403. But sometimes, and we do it in our driver training course, we flip the units because we sort of discover that if we do the second unit first, it actually covers off nearly all the first unit, and they're so similar that it actually helps our clients to do the second unit first and do the first unit second. So quite often we'll do that. It just depends, but most times the logical stream works okay. And then finally, you've got the letter at the end, which is now missing from a lot of the new units of competence. They've dropped that. But in the older units, you've got the letter, and that's telling you that it's the second version. So if it's A, it's the first version of the unit. If it's a B, it's the second version of that unit. And if it's a C, it's the third version of the unit. So again, as a whole qualification gets updated, these units get updated along with it. And so it's easy for you as a trainer to make sure that you've probably got the matching unit to the matching qual. Quite often they will coincide, that they'll all go from A units to B units. Sometimes you'll have a midlife update for a particular unit, and you'll notice that the qualification has all these B units, and then all of a sudden there's one of them that's a C unit. And that'll be once again through industry consultation. Industry will have got back saying, hey, these guys who have got this unit, which is meant to make them do this job, they're not understanding this really important part. It's not like it's like no one is teaching that out there. And they'll go and look at the unit and they'll say, you know what? It's not in the unit. It doesn't exist. No one's telling the trainers and the organizations that that's what they want. You would hope that the training organizations understand that and they just put it in there, but sometimes it doesn't. It doesn't occur. So they'd say, all right, even though it's midlife within this qualification and training package, we're going to have to update this unit. This unit will go from a B to a C. So even though in this qualification there's 10 units of competence, 9 of them are Bs, there's going to be 1 C in there. Who cares? We just make sure we're using the latest version and everyone's a winner. Sometimes units will go through an update that changes the code. None of the information. All right, so this is where I missed, because I was going to say I remember teaching this slide, but I knew that there was 2 slides before that. So hopefully now that all makes sense to you guys. I'll go back through to where I was. I apologize if I've bent your brain in a way that you now wish I hadn't, but I needed to and wanted to explain and unlock what the codes mean. It's so important. And of course, you can go back and reference this later on. So like I said, we have the unit descriptor, we have the title, which is telling us the work activity, the unit descriptor, which is really clarifying the job itself, so to speak, any prerequisites. On the following page, we'll start to have the elements of performance criteria. The elements are the basic building blocks of the unit of competency. Each element describes a major skill required to carry out the work. Reading the elements of competency helps you to understand which specific work skills will be the focus of the training and assessment. And then the elements are broken up further into performance criteria. And these are statements within each element. They express what workplace activity is to be done and the required level of performance. And each numbered performance criterion describes an aspect of the major skill identified in the element. And I'll go back and hopefully we can have a look at this in a second. I'll just explain that to you. So in some packages, keywords and phrases within performance criteria are written in bold or italicized in print. So that lets you know that they are explained in more detail in the range statement section, which we'll get to in a minute. So if I go back a page or 2, and here we have the elements of performance criteria. I'm going to make my screen a little bit bigger so I can see where it's at. It's not really great for me. Hopefully you can see it, but on the second page, on the left-hand side, we have a 1 and a 2. They're the 2 elements. And then on the right-hand side, matching the elements is the actual performance criteria. Again, I'll go through this with you on Saturday on the big screen so we can see it in better detail. And again, in the other presentations, you'll be able to see this a bit better. Unfortunately, on my size screen, I can't read you the elements of performance criteria, but what it is, it's telling you, once again, and this is an important aspect of understanding a unit of competence, it's telling you what your students have to do or can show that they have the right attitude for and the right skills. So it's telling you what your students have to do as a result of your training for you to deem them competent, to be able to pass them. So the element will be like the major part of it, and then the performance criteria is a breakdown of that major element, that major component, or as the name suggests, the major element of what's required to do that job good. Again, if you remember, you say, I'm reading this this unit of competence. It's telling me in the descriptor what the job is. I can imagine what someone looks like doing that job properly. What that element of performance criteria is doing is breaking that up into measurable statements that you say, oh yeah, when I read that, it's saying that this person must be able to identify lifestyle choices that stops them from being tired. Now, I'm just going by memory on that one. I've taught this subject so much, I think I do know the elements of performance criteria off the top of my head. But things like having to choose the right diet and all that sort of stuff will be broken up. And then you say, well, all right, I need to create assessments and training that gets someone to prove that they can do that or they can understand that. And that's what the elements of performance criteria do as a part of the unit of competence. They don't tell you what to teach. They tell you this is what this student must be able to do as a result of your training and assessing. And once you understand that you're actually being told what the finish line is, you then have to reverse engineer everything that leads up to that. And that will make more sense when we get to the assessment cluster, because that actually is an underpinning principle of this whole world of vocational education and training. We get told what the finish line is, and then we've got to go back and reverse engineer how we're going to get people to there. But that's really important, because unless we know what the finish line is, unless we know what the benchmark is, how on earth could we create any assessment or any training to get someone to the desired level to meet the unit of competence? All right. Hopefully that makes sense to you guys. I'm going to go back to the smaller section. So if you've got a question there, but yeah, so the elements of performance criteria clearly tells us, defines to us what the finished product is for someone to be deemed competent. On the next page, you'll have a thing called required knowledge and skills, and it'll also go into the evidence guide and the range statement. So we have the required knowledge and skills. This describes the essential knowledge and skills and their level required for this unit. So they're saying, hey, this is what these people need to know and do at the required level. Sometimes that can be seen as a bit of a prerequisite. We then have the evidence guide, and the evidence is the basis of assessment. It provides direction for you to identify the evidence you will need to determine whether a person is competent in the unit. So when we read the elements of performance criteria, it sets out what the person needs to be able to do to be deemed competent. But funny enough, the evidence guide really breaks it down to those measurable things, or the really identifiable aspects of the elements of performance criteria. So sometimes people that write these units of competence get a bit lazy, and in the evidence guide, they'll just say, evidence required for this unit must cover all of the elements of performance criteria. So whether that's a good thing or a bad thing, I don't know. Sometimes you get an evidence guide that really specifically says, hey, this is what people need to do. Alex, unfortunately, was writing an assessment the other day where the evidence guide and the elements of performance criteria didn't match. So someone had gone and written these elements of performance criteria saying, hey, this is what someone needs to do to be able to pass this subject. And then unfortunately, the terrible thing about this was that the evidence guide didn't really match it. So we had this simple unit that's ended up having to blow out to, at the moment, about a 70 question plus other work for us to meet all our sort of requirements. And now we're trying to work through and minimize that, because we're scratching our head saying, this is crazy. This is a pretty simple unit. But because the evidence guide doesn't match the elements of performance criteria, and even for Alex, he's got a companion guide, that other document they're saying you need to look at and check out as well, all three documents don't really match. So it's been a real headache for him to navigate, and now I'm sort of going through it. And as Alex wrote there, it's a 5-hour unit. It's something that's meant to be started and completed in less than 1 day. And because of all the confusion within the elements and performance criteria with the evidence guide, we've got an assessment that might take 5 hours. So right now we're trying to work back through and see the bits that we can get rid of, that in an audit, we would say, well, hey, this is why we had to ignore this, because at the end of the day, we need to prove that. Otherwise, we could possibly fail an audit. Exactly. The assessment is almost 5 hours. It doesn't make sense at all. Cool. Yes, as it says, the evidence guide assists us with the interpretation and assessment of the unit, and usually contains an overview of the assessment in the industry context, critical aspects to be considered for assessment, and the evidence required to demonstrate competence. And that's important. Some of the older units will have these critical aspects of evidence, and really that's what that's telling you, is that if you're writing an assessment for this, you better, as an absolute minimum, make sure that you're covering off the critical aspects. Because if you don't do that, you're not meeting the requirements at all and you would fail an audit. And more importantly, you're failing your students. Yeah, so very, very important thing. The evidence guide will also tell you the context of any specific resources required for assessment. So if you need any particular, any particular resources, it'll tell you that, and suggested methods of assessment. Sometimes I'll say that, hey, to competence for this unit can be demonstrated through a range of workplace activities, simulated work roles, and a question and answer, or whatever. So it'll actually suggest for you, this is how we think you need to assess this unit. Sometimes it says here you must. It'll say demonstration of competence in this unit must consist of a practical observation, whatever the case may be. So sometimes it'll actually tell you that you must assess this unit like this. Any further guidance information for assessment will be there. Access and equity considerations where relevant, required knowledge and skills, and in some units of competency, these components may be listed in other sections of the unit, like I said before. The evidence guide is an integral part of the unit and should be read and interpreted in conjunction with the other components, especially the elements of performance criteria. Next up is, it will be guided by the range statement, and you can use your industry experience. I reckon, in actual fact, I think we've slipped a slide. No, that's okay. So we have the, next up, I thought we did. So next up on that unit of competence was the range statement. So after we have the elements of performance criteria, the required knowledge and skills, the evidence guide, the next thing we have is the range statement. Now, the range statement relates to the unit of competency as a whole. It allows for different work environments and situations that may affect performance. The range statement is important because it strengthens the link between the performance criteria and the requirements of the workplace. The bold words and phrases provide more detailed explanations of keywords and phrases that was used in the performance criteria. So pretty much what this range statement looks like, and if you've got a unit open in front of you, you'll be able to see it. It kind of tells you where this can all take place. So if you were teaching someone how to be a safe, like if we looked at the apply safe car driving behaviour unit, if we looked at the range statement, it would say things like on a variety of roads, including city, country, freeway. It's kind of telling you where all of this training and assessment can take place. It tries to list as many variables or as many different opportunities, whether it's industry-based or not, where the assessing and training of this unit of competence could occur. Of course, they can't list every single particular range in which this the training and assessing of this unit could occur, but they try to give you a really broad overview and try to provide you with provide you with lots of different choices and opportunity where this training and assessing could take place. It's exactly like it's saying. It's the range statement. Hey, when you teach and assess this unit of competence, you can do it within these parameters at the very least. Guided by the range statement, you can use your industry experience to further strengthen the links between the training and the workplace skill requirements. The range statement does not cover every possible instance or variation. Finally, we have the unit sectors in the competency field. Knowing the competency field helps you with using any required companion guide. So if we went back to that TLIF 2010 unit, within that code, the F within that TLIF is telling us that that unit of competence comes from the safety sector of the TLI training package. And when you would go to download the companion guide that is on the front of that unit of competence on that web page, you would scroll down through all the choices and you'd get to the F part, which is safety. You'd click on that, and sure enough, the extra bits that you need to consider with this unit of competence would be there. And once again, I would suggest to do that. Open the unit of competence, have a look at that front page where it says you need to use this companion guide. Click on that. Look down for the F, for the safety factor, click on that, and then all of a sudden you'll get this writing about, somewhere in there amongst all those units will be TLIF 2010, and you'll be able to see what that companion guide is saying you need to consider when creating assessments and training for this unit. So new units of competency now consist of two documents, the unit and its matching evidence guide. The new unit looks the same but doesn't go past the range of conditions. It still has the elements of performance criteria. It will now list the foundation skills instead of the employability skills, and it will still list any companion guides and mapping information that's required. So this is now the new unit of competence. This is the one that's replaced the other one. So the other one was about a 6-page document. The new unit, the TLAF 2010, written in its new format, now only has 2 pages for this part, and it's telling us its modification history. It's still got the descriptor. It tells us the application. It lists, it's got 2 pages, this one. It still lists the elements of performance criteria and some other information. And then after that, we have the evidence guide, or the dedicated assessment requirements document. So all that stuff about the evidence guide, the range statement, and the required skills in the new units of competence, they've now put that in a separate document. And if you were to go look at TLAF 2010A on training.gov, you'll see that you can only download the unit of competence. Yet when you go to TLAF 2010 and you scroll down, you'll see that you can download the unit of competence and the assessment requirements document. And what it's done is, as I said, the dedicated assessment requirements document helps you to interpret the assessment requirements of the elements of performance criteria. It provides information about what evidence can be used to demonstrate the defined competency, critical aspects, and for assessment and evidence. And the main difference is that the document will now specify the assessment criteria in more detail. So all they've done is, with these new units, they said, yep, we'll still leave the elements of performance criteria here, but the dedicated assessment requirements is now going to get its own document so we can explore everything that's required in that area in a little bit more detail. So if you're using a new unit, remember you're going to have to download not only the unit of competence, but its matching assessment requirements document. So again, here's the assessment requirements document. You open it up and straight away it's got the performance evidence. That's the other thing now. They talk about the performance evidence, what needs to be required in that area, as well as then the knowledge evidence. And then there's, like I said, the assessment conditions. So they list the performance. They've kind of gone away and used a little bit more new language. The performance evidence, instead of saying the required skills and knowledge, we now got the required performance and now the required knowledge that we need to make sure that our assessments meet and our training meets. And then there'll be a lot more within the assessment conditions. This is how you need to set up and run your assessment. Funny enough, in the training in the whole TAE sector, we're much more about assessment than actually training. The assessment process drives everything else, which we did talk about a little bit last night. All right, guys.